Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Porch Talk. This is episode 13. Jamar isn't able to make it here tonight with us, so we have Rusty Yates that's going to be joining me for our weekly podcast. This episode is presented to you by Cantrell Holdings, LLC, Equipment Rentals. If you live in Southwest Virginia, Southern West Virginia, or Eastern Kentucky and find yourself looking for equipment rental, give Cantrell Holdings Equipment Rentals a call at 276-596-3078. With excavators, backhoe loaders, and jackhammers available, Cantrell Holdings Equipment Rentals has equipment for any job, big or small. Be sure to give their Facebook page a like and follow to learn more about their equipment rental options, including their operator services. We also have Wyatt Pole Holders as our other sponsor. If you have fishing poles that you would like to display safely on the wall or just need a way to get them off the floor, Wyatt Pole Holders has what you need. Sold on Etsy, he has a nice selection of fishing racks to fit your needs. Pine, oak, and poplar are just some of the wood used to craft these beautiful racks. Engravings are also available upon request. I haven't got to see any of them yet, but he also mentioned doing some picture frames, engraving on them, and he does plaques and cutting boards, stuff like that I've shown on here before. So again, that's Wyatt Pole Holders as our other sponsor. So Rusty, how you been, man?
Good, buddy. How about you?
Been pretty good. We missed you here the other night, but we were able to sub you in tonight, given that Jamar's out again. So just to let everybody know, Jamar is okay. He's alive. So for those of you that are wondering and worrying about him, he just had to work pretty late tonight, and that's, we talked about this before. It's kind of hard to work a full-time schedule, try to fit these in at night after the kids go to bed, and then try to get back up early next day. Both of us, we both get up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, go to work, and I think Jamar's the same way. So I think he was wanting to, but it was going to be really hard for him to get on here and do an episode, sleep for maybe 2 hours, and get back up again. But with that being said, happy to have you here. And for those of y'all that haven't listened to his episode on here before, Rusty's been on here with the boys, joined the Porch series twice. The second time he's on here, everybody, started quoting the word trash, for his take on Miami quarterbacks in the past. So again, we're happy to have you.
Thanks.
I guess we're going to start off and go into our country music section of our Porch Talk episode. So this week on Porch Talk country music special, or segment, I should say, we have our Porch Talk Top 5 New Country. So on this week's Porch Talk's Top 5 New Country, at 5 we have The Rug by Fair and Rachel's. At 4 we got Too Far Gone by Zach Cross Band. At 3 we got Country Gonna Be Alright by David Adam Barnes. Number 2 we got Foot Out the Door by Dylan Carmichael. And number 1 on our Porch Talk's Top 5 New Country is Whiskey on the Wall by Chase Beckham. So Chase Beckham, for those of you who don't know him or haven't listened to him, he is an American Idol winner. He is also the only person to win American Idol with his own song that he wrote, which is 23. And so right now he's a new artist. He's supposed to be the next big thing in country music, a lot of people think. So if you haven't listened to him, go check out 23 and go check out our Porch Talk Top 5 New songs playlist that has him on it as well. Another segment that we were going to start this week, and unfortunately Jamar ain't here to kind of talk about it, but we were going to do another one called Jamar's Throwback Song. So the song that he chose for this week is A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash. So this song, I hadn't heard it in a very long time. It's kind of one of those songs where I think Charlie Daniels was kind of famous for this a little bit, where he's playing the music, but it's also kind of like he's talking, telling a story. And the first time he ever played this, he was locked up in San Quentin State Prison. So that's kind of cool because when you listen to the song, you can kind of hear the people in the background shouting and yelling and stuff. And it's like kind of, I don't know if that was inmates or whatever in the actual audio of the song, but just to kind of put it in perspective, you can kind of think of it that way. So the boy named Sue, it's actually wrote by Shel Silverstein, if I can say that right. Who was the same guy that wrote the book The Giving Tree, which I thought was wild. Did not know that. It kind of tells the story of a man named Sue by his father. At birth, the name created a hard life for the man because we all know, you get, as a male, you get a name that's kind of like a female name. We all joke around and stuff when we're little kids, pick on each other, and that's kind of what the song's about. And kind of a twist at the end, he ends up meeting his father, and when he meets his father, they fight a little bit, and he tells him that, hey, I called you that because I knew I was leaving, but I still wanted you to be a tough guy. And I knew that you'd be a tough guy because I knew you'd get picked on all your life because of your name, Sue. So it's kind of a funny song, a cool story as well. Something else I did want to mention, and I know that Rusty's the one who told me about this today, so it's something that's pretty exciting for tomorrow, is we got Cody Johnson and Jason Aldean coming out with new albums tomorrow. So what do you think about that, Rusty, so far, as far as the album and which one you are most excited for and what you expect from each one of them?
I'm pretty excited. I think it's two big names in country music, mainstream country music, dropping albums tomorrow. So, as far as being more excited for one, if you would ask me a couple years ago, I'd probably be more excited for Jason Aldean. But now, after the last couple of releases, I'm more kind of siding with Cody Johnson on this one. Kind of know what you're going to get with both of them, but you're going to get more of a country sound with Cody Johnson. And I think I personally think the singles that he's released for this album have been a little bit stronger than Jason Aldean's. Even though Aldean's has been a little bit more controversial, it's the name, the songs have been out there a little bit more with Try That in a Small Town. But I think as far as replay value and what just generally gets me excited is the songs that Cody Johnson's released so far.
I love Cody Johnson. I'm still upset at myself that a few years ago he played in Pikeville and I didn't go to it, and then somebody told me that the power ran out and he actually hooked his stuff up through a generator in his van, I guess, and played an acoustic set. So that would have been fun to see. I'm personally pretty excited for the Jason Aldean album. He has released a few songs already off of it. Whiskey Drink, and I guess Try That in a Small Town is going to be on there. And, it took off whenever it became like you said, a controversial issue. And I guess to his benefit, because, as far as popularity goes, it went through the roof whenever that song took off like that. Just have the songs that have came out so far. I love Let Your Boys Be Country. If you haven't heard that, I think it kind of reminds me of some old Aldean. Not really his hit singles, but some of those songs that we like Water Tower. That's a song that's not like a big song, but it's one of those songs on an album that you can just replay over and over. Right. Tough Crowd as well is on there. And that song, I think, pretty much kind of like a small town song, just like Try That in a Small Town. It's kind of similar in that way. But I think it's relatable to where we live at, and I'm sure a lot of other small towns. And Cody, Cody's awesome. So I'm sure both albums will be great, and I'm sure we'll be talking about them next week.
Right, I definitely think they'll be on at least one song from each album will probably make the top 5 of the Porch Talk Spotify playlist. So,
It might. I mean, Riley Green came out the new album a few weeks ago, and none of his songs made it. I liked a lot of his songs, but it didn't crack my top 5. So we'll
I
see.
wasn't I wasn't as I don't know, like I listened to the album and I was excited for that album, but I feel like the long wait between his albums and how many EPs he's dropped in between the albums, I
Yeah,
think it just kind of like took a little steam off the excitement for me. I mean, I listened to the album and there's a couple solid cuts on it, but not really like it's nothing that really like stood out to me.
yeah,
I've read a lot of I've read and listened to a couple people online talk about um My Last Rodeo. Ain't My Last Rodeo, I think's the name of the
yeah,
song.
yeah,
Like that was like their favorite song on the whole record, and it's really good. But I could probably name you, you know, 5, 6 songs off the top of my head that I like a lot better
oh yeah,
off
definitely.
that record. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I like that song, but like you said, I can name several by Riley that I like better than that song.
yeah,
Uh, but I mean, still, yeah, I mean, it's a good album. Um, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we talked about this before. I think sometimes they put out too many singles, and
yeah,
it does take off some steam. I guess they do that just to stay relevant. I don't want
mm,
to say stay relevant because of course they are, but it's more I guess just to maybe keep a steady. I don't want to say cash flow. I don't. They might. I'm sure they do get cash flow from singles and stuff they put out. Maybe it might even be pressure from the record label. I don't
yeah,
know, but regardless, when you put out like 4 or 5 songs before the album even comes out, and the album's only like 11 or 12 songs, it does take some of the steam off of it.
yeah. Which we live in the day and age now where technology, TikTok, Instagram, all of these different types of social media platforms exist. And if these guys are releasing music, then they have a reason to push their name out there more and more and more. So I think that
Yeah,
possibly has something to do with it. I'm sure the record labels have a hand in it.
yeah,
Now, the independent artists like Zach Bryan, that's a little different. He releases an album, then releases a 7-song EP like 2 weeks later. That's a little different. But with these
yeah,
big name artists that are under a contract with a label, I'm sure there's something there in a clause or something. Hey, we need you to do this, this, this. Release this many songs over the course of the next however long.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, and Zach Bryan's he's a unique case. I mean,
Right.
if it was up to him, he'd put out something every month, and
Yeah.
everything he puts out's great, in my opinion. Um, so I guess that kind of closes that out as far as the country music part. Um, what most of our viewers want to come and hear is our high school football stuff. So before we get into previewing some of these games and talking about them, I'm going to give you my Week 10 rundown of your high school football schedule in Southwest Virginia. So in Single A, we have Twin Valley at Hurley. We have Castlewood at Eastside. J.I. Burton at Thomas Walker. Wise County Central at Grundy. Patrick Henry at Northwood. Holston at Chilhowie. Honaker at Real Retreat. Rye Cove at Twin Springs. Narrows at Bath County. Galax at Grayson County. Auburn at George Wythe. In your double A games, you got Tazewell at Lebanon. Graham at Richlands. John Battle at Union. Gate City at Ridgeview. Marion at Virginia High. And then the sole game 3A that we wanted to highlight was Abingdon at Lee. So just to get us started, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about Twin Valley at Hurley. That's a game that's close to our heart. We both graduated from Twin Valley. We got spanked a few times, I think, by early on in their varsity careers, but we won their senior year, and in what was a classic at that time, I think it was like maybe 46, 45 or whatever it was. But programs have came a long way since then. Went through their ups and downs. Twin Valley was at that time going. They were ascending. They had a pretty good season the year after that, which that was back in 2014 and 2015, 2016. In those years, they were ascending. They were doing pretty good. Then you also know Hurley, I think it was around 2016, had their magical team, undefeated season. So we're in two very different spots now. Twin Valley right now, coming off a canceled season last year, they are 2-7, which credit to them. Those two games. I'm sure if you was to say that last year, hey, you're going to come back next year, be playing football, and you're going to win two games. To some schools, that might not mean much, but to them, I think that was a big victory as far as just kind of getting the monkey off your back and getting the program back started again. They are right now 17 players that they have. The last I checked, anyway. So that's, to me, that's very encouraging and a lot to build on going forward. Yeah. Coach Krieger does a great job over there. If y'all haven't listened to our podcast with him, he was our first guest that came on, and we're still very thankful for that. But go and take a listen to it. He does a great job with those kids. Their safety is his top priority. But speaking of coaches, we also have Zach Deal that's 2-2 since he took over. So he's been doing really good. The kids are responding to him. Landon Bailey right now of Hurley is just 41 yards shy of hitting that 1,000-yard mark. So they got talent. They're 4-5. I think they were just trying to push into that last playoff spot a few weeks ago and end up coming up short. But I think this game, it'll be a good way to end the season for both teams. I'd like to see a good competitive game. These are two teams that I know we got consolidation coming up in a few years, and that's, here and there. I mean, there's discussions about it, good and bad. But Hurley right now, I think from what I had heard, they got quite a bit of seniors. That person that told me that may be wrong, but if that's the case, then it seems like next year both programs are going to have a lot of kids that need this experience. So, as far as Twin Valley goes, Rusty, we both played there. As far as that school and the team and playing over there by the BBF gym, what did that mean to you when you played for Coach Krieger?
Well, it's been a few years. A lot of things have happened, but before I get into that, I want to say props to Tommy for keeping that program afloat in some manner or form. I mean, the record doesn't show, but the fact that you can come back and win some ball games after a year of not having any football at all, that's hard. I mean, there was no football played for Twin Valley at all last year, so it's almost like you're having to restart and kind of build up a program again.
Yeah.
And he had been building on that program for a long time. And there's been a lot of players come through there that that were very talented and had a lot of athletic ability. But for your question, when we played, we didn't have a whole lot. Like there wasn't a whole lot of winning seasons for Twin Valley. So the expectation from everybody for us was not very high. So all the expectation came from us and our coaches. They're the ones that instilled that, hey, we can do this. And that's one thing that we didn't go to the playoffs the year we were our senior year, but just the fact that we played as hard as we possibly could, and I felt like the coaches gave everything that they had. I felt like we gave everything we had, and a couple of injuries kept us from being in the playoffs that year. We were right there, and of course you were one of the injuries that year, tearing your ACL, and Brandon, he got hurt. So we had a couple key pieces out that year, but the fact that we still were in it, and we were one game away, you know that was a good feeling. It would have been a lot
Yeah.
better if we would have made it, but that was what I remember the most was like we out of all the teams before us, we were the closest ones to getting to the playoffs. So that's what I remember the most.
Yeah, it was good times. Wish I could go back sometimes without the torn ACL, but
Right.
um, so we'll. I'm gonna. I ain't gonna say breeze through, but I'm gonna mention a few things on some of these other games that we have going forward, and we'll stop and talk about a few of them. Mainly some of your bigger ones this week. So I do want to mention, the Castlewood East Side game. East Side's 5-4, and if they win this or win tomorrow, they'll clinch a playoff berth. So far, Castlewood, it's been kind of a down year for them. I think they play hard for what they got. Their quarterback Braden Hutchins or Houchins, however you say that. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. He's a heck of a quarterback. East Side right now, though, they're a very dangerous team if they end up getting into that like 7 or 8 spot. I I know that I think that Honecker matches up well, but 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, um, that's a scary game in the first round when they can sneak up on you. East Side's Keldon Hamilton has been one of the best ninth graders in this area. He has 1,134 rushing yards and 105 tackles. And they also got Luke Trent, who has 619 rushing yards and 370 receiving yards. So, the tough team. I think their schedule has been pretty hard, and I think that's kind of put them in this 5-4 spot where they're at. But I don't think that tells just quite how good they are and how good they can be. Um, just some other games that we want to hit on. I do want to mention Patrick Henry at Northwood. So this game is another one that I think Patrick Henry is going to win. I think Northwood, they've had a down year this year, and that program, it seems like it comes in waves. I know when we played, they were very good. Those are the years when Channing Call was there, and I think they had a few other guys. But this year, they have been struggling this year. But Patrick Henry, they've clinched a playoff berth now in 10 straight seasons, and that's a credit to head coach Seth Padgett. I talked about him a few weeks ago on the podcast. He's a heck of a coach. He instills physicality and toughness into that program, and you can see it in the way they play. You can see it in their star running back, Cam Goodspeed. Again, as far as for me, he might be my one of my favorite players in this area. They get him the ball 40, 50 times a game, which is crazy, and it doesn't look like he's missing a step. So last week, they ended up beating Chilhowie, scoring 28 unanswered points. Like I said, Cam Goodspeed had a heck of a game. He had 120. Well, I'll have to check on that stat line again. I don't know what he had last week, but nevertheless, he had a good game. And their lineman, Tyler Barrett, he's one to watch for. He'll probably be going playing D1 here soon. So, that's a good guy to run behind with a heck of a running back. So, that's for the Patrick Henry Northwood game. So what we also have is Holston Chilhowie, which I think that this game to me is a sneaky one. This one, I know that everybody's looking towards Honecker and Roller Tree, Rye Cove, Twin Springs, and even the other region, Narrows and Bath County. Those are all, huge games, or even in Galax and Grayson County. But this one will kind of sneak up on you. So this game right now, huge playoff implications. It's kind of in that right now. Holston's in that 5th spot in the 1D playoff PowerPoint, and Chilhowie is 9th. So they're also on the outside looking in. Holston last week had a heck of a game with Rural Retreat, an instant classic where they won with 40 seconds left. Last week, their quarterback, if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to look at it again, but Noah Tweed, if that's how you say it, he ended up scoring right there at the end of the game, and then they went for a 2-point conversion and won. So again, heck of a game for them. Chilhowie, though, head coach Reed Sturgill, he's had a good group. I think that's just a team that I think that Hoagahigi district, you have Honaker at the top, but everybody else down below that, I mean, I don't want to say they're even, but any of them can win any given Friday. So I think this game is going to be an exciting one. I think it's a very sneaky game. It's one that if you went to it, I think it could be a classic, just like last week was with Holston and Royal Retreat. So also for Chilhowie, you have Ian Sturgill, some names to watch. He has 794 rushing yards, and he's got 7 touchdowns. Noah Hill's got 43 catches, 576 yards. And Asher Chapman has 1,336 passing yards and 13 touchdowns. Those have been the star guys for Chilhowie on offense. And on defense, it's led by Daniel Hutton and Ezra Taylor. And each one of them have around 60, 70 tackles. So, again, one to watch. If you go to that one, I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all. So, I guess we can get to it. These are some of the bigger ones I kind of wanted to talk about. The ones that I think that everybody, well, I think the Honaker Rural Retreat game might not be a huge game to people, but I think given the fact that it's Honaker and what they're doing this year, it's a big game to us. And then we also have Twin Springs and Ryco, which is the game of the week. Jamar will be at that game tomorrow night, so if y'all see him, holler at him and tell him, kind of what you think about the game. So, Honaker and at Rural Retreat. So last week, I didn't want to mention this. Peyton Music, he completed 19 of 20 for 344 yards and 6 touchdowns when they beat Northwood. So not only that, but we were blessed with the fact that some of these high schools want to reach out to us, and Honaker had sent us some of the stats from last week's game, and I want to throw those out there, give these guys a little bit of recognition. Austin Claiborne, he had 1 rush, 4 yards, 2 receptions for 31 yards. Looked like he did a pretty good job on the receiving end. Braden Mabe, 4 carries for 33 yards. He also got a reception for 6 yards. You also have Nick Ball. He had 3 rushes for 33 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception for 47 yards, and he was 4 or 5 passing for 37 yards. So you also have Isaac Johnson, 2 catches for 12 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Stevens, 3 catches, 26 yards and a touchdown. And he is 5 of 6 on his extra points. So Brandon Marsh, you had 1 rush for 8 yards and a reception for 9 yards. You have Malachi Lowe that had 2 catches for 25 yards. And then you have Jackson Dye that had 2 carries, 6 yards. He had 2 catches for 16 yards and also an extra point. And then you get into some of these, some of the big names right here that we've all been hearing, we're watching and hearing about every week. You got Aiden Lowe had 2 catches for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. Parker Bandy had 6 catches, 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then, I had already mentioned Peyton Music's stat line that he had. So, talk a little bit more about this game. They will clinch the Hoagahigi title with this. I think them and might be Rural Retreat. I think might be tied in that. I'd have to double check that and make sure. But then you also have this is the first time that, well, this is the third time for Honecker they could complete a perfect season. So this would be their third time doing that. That's something that's pretty big for this area. And I think kind of, I don't want to say come out of nowhere, but you think about where they were a few years ago, where they were kind of going down. So this is their first meeting, though, since 2002. So it's been a little bit since they've played, about, what are you going to say, about 21 years? I mean, my math ain't the best, but I think that's about right. Something to keep in mind, Honecker quarterback Peyton Music has passed for 40 touchdowns and only one interception so far. Not only that, but he is 147, 230. He has 2,383 yards passing. So he is lit it up throwing the ball. You also have Parker Bandy, who has 60 catches for 856 yards and 13 touchdowns. Something that we also wanted to mention from them, Music only needs 258 yards to break the school record for career passing yards held by Heath Miller, which is 4,410, and Peyton is only a junior. So that is something that's pretty special. Everybody in this area, everybody in Southwest Virginia knows who Heath Miller is. So for him to touch that record is special, and he's a junior, so I'd like to see him break it this year. I think that'd be pretty cool, really cap off this magical season. But if not, he'll surely break it next year. I know we didn't. I mentioned Parker Bandy. He had the 60 catches, 800 some yards. There were 13 receiving touchdowns. He also has a rushing touchdown, a kick return touchdown, and a punt return touchdown. So another star of this area. Shane Wicks, when he was on I guess it's about a month or so ago on the podcast, he was talking about how he's a coach out there in the field. Super smart guy. One that I think a lot of colleges would love to have on their team. Aiden Lowe, he's had on the year 501 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, 651 yards rushing, and he averages 9.4 yards per carry. He has 6 rushing touchdowns and a punt return touchdown, but he now has 5,500 all-purpose yards for his career. Very, very impressive. And I'm just trying to really just get all this out there for you guys, because I think that you don't see teams like this come around very often, and it's very special that we have this, as far as for me anyway, very close to home, and even for you, it's not a far drive. Peyton Music right now is, in all classifications, second in the state in passing. Just so everybody, just to kind of keep it in perspective, Parker Bandy's 5th in the state in receiving yards. So, huge stat line and stuff for them. Before I go forward talking about this game a little more, you got to watch him week 1 with me against Lebanon. What have you thought about Honecker this year? Air raid offense, these insane stat lines. What do you think about them so far this year, Rusty?
Exciting. That's about the most bold word that I can use for them, is exciting. They can get the ball down the field quick, their way, and they've yet to find a team to do anything about it. So, and the skill on that team, you was talking about Music. Those are video game numbers that you were, spitting out there. 19 for 20, 6 touchdowns. I can't even do that on the easiest difficulty in Madden. So,
Yeah.
That's a special talent right there. But I want to give a shout out to Tyler Stevens. He's a very good player and whatnot, but he's also a remarkable individual. He, for some reason, I'm not sure how my son Mason knows him. I don't know if it was just I think they had the same number Mason's first year of Little League football, And I guess he just walked up to him and started talking to him. And now every year or whenever Mason sees him, like he goes up and gives him a hug, and he's super nice to him. And
It's
I think
awesome.
I really appreciate that because he doesn't have to do that, you know. So I really appreciate that.
And I guess I should have mentioned that Rusty is also a Little League coach at Homeacre. So just
Assistant.
maybe that ain't too biased of an opinion for us both. um, yeah, I think that I think Homeacre takes this one, but I do think that Real Retreat is a dangerous game. Um, they have a heck of a quarterback too, Caleb Roberts. He threw for about 150 yards last week, 2 touchdowns, and had 61 yards rushing. That is just such a heartbreaking loss between them and Holston. To lose like that, the main end of the game, especially on the 2-point conversion as well. That's heartbreaking. Um, with that being said, they still have playoff hopes, so this will be a good game for them. If they can manage to pull this upset off, it would be a great game for them to go into the playoffs with. If it all works out like that, this would be Honeacker's last road game though until the state finals, if they get that far. So we'll get to watch a lot of playoff football just down the road, and we're excited for that. So, and what I guess should be about everybody's game of the week, as we have Rye Cove traveling to Nicholsville, play against Twin Springs. So this game, um, a lot of people dub it as the Scott County Super Bowl, which these kids, from everything that I've read, they play against each other in Little League all the way up through JV, all the way up into varsity. And last year it was a pretty big game as well. And in that game last year, you had Ryan Horn for Twin Springs rush for 340 yards and scored all 4 touchdowns for the Titans. So he's gone now, gone play at I think it's Campbellsville University in Kentucky. I hope I'm saying that right. So everybody kind of thought they would take a step back this year. That's not been the case at all. And that's a credit to head coach Keith Warner and some of those young athletes that they got. Coach Warner, man, I didn't really know much about him. But I was listening to a podcast today, and I kind of wanted to give them a shout out as well. They're another great local podcast. But it's a Tailgate Talk with the Boys. And they had Coach Warner on this week. He kind of talked about how, some of his coaching experience, but also how he really invested in Little League. Got a flag football program going over there. I think, according to him, that really changed the program when he got there. And they had a few of their coaches go to East Side, so they had to change some stuff up as well. But their new OC that came in, they started running the veer. And I think that, according to him, the players kind of were taken back about it at first, but then I guess they adapted pretty well. I mean, evidently they have. They have played great this year. They're one of your teams that I think kind of flew under the radar. Caleb Dingus, their quarterback, he's a star. He's one of the 2 star quarterbacks in this game. We'll get to the other one here in a minute. He's thrown for 1,087 yards. He has 10 touchdowns and just 1 interception. But he's also rushed for 519 yards and 14 scores. Then you also have Landon Lane, who's been our player of the week before. He's thrown for 820 yards and 12 touchdowns. He has 4 interceptions, but he's rushed for 859 yards and 16 touchdowns. So both these guys are dual threat quarterbacks, and I think that this game is going to be, I think it's going to be played as far as with the rushing attacks on both sides. Twin Springs also has Colton Kilgore, who has 1,394 yards rushing and 25 touchdowns. And he averages about 14 yards per carry. So, yeah, and they got a good receiver as well with Gilmer. He's got 434 yards, 7 touchdowns. So they have talent. They can throw the ball. They can run it. But I think that rushing attack's what's so dangerous with them. Landon Lane on the other side. You also have Will Rollins. He's got about 500 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. Barnett's a good receiver. Jesse's got 5 touchdown receptions as well. And man, that I don't know, that team, they played really hard with Honaker earlier in the year, and so I think a lot of people I've talked to is just saying, well, they got it. Like they're going to get it. They've been tested against Honaker. They show what they can do. And Twin Springs, I think Twin Springs, they've played some good games, some good opponents. But they're, I think right over there, one big one was that Honaker game, and they did well in it. They lost, but they played well. But I think on the other side, Twin Springs' big game was Union, and that's a tall task for anybody, much less a team or a school the size of Twin Springs. But listen to Coach Warner talk about they learned a lot in that game, so it's still important to them. But I think people are just kind of, the ones I've talked to are writing off Twin Springs too much. I think it'll be a good, close game. I think it's going to be a classic. I'm really interested to hear how Jamar, like what he's going to say about it. And I think this is the type of game that it's a rival. So no matter how their seasons go, I'm sure both of them want to go to the state championship. Everybody does. But even if you don't, if you win this one, you can hang your hat on that for a while. So, Rusty, just to kind of stay on that note a little bit. So, Rye Cove is riding a 6-game winning streak, and they're averaging 43 points. Twin Springs is 8-1, and they're putting up 44 points a game. And not only that, but they just had 73 points they scored against Thomas Walker last week, which was a program record. And same time, Rye Cove just had their 5th shutout of the year last week against J.I. Burton. So when you have two teams like this going up against each other, both averaging 47 points, dual threat quarterbacks, playmakers all over the field, a rival, Scott County Super Bowl. A game like that, like what's exciting about that for you?
Well, it depends. I got 2 questions. Is it frowned upon to gamble on this game? And I'm taking the over if I can, because I'd say more than likely combined, you're probably going to have 100 points scored. So, that, I mean, I guess it all depends on if you'd rather watch a defensive game or you want to watch an offensive game. And if you are looking to watch a defensive game, I'd probably stay at the house. But if you're looking for fireworks, I'd say your best bet you're gonna find it. Rye Cove this weekend. So
I definitely agree, and I don't think that they do gamble in the local games, but I'm sure that you would be correct on that.
Yeah.
So, a few other games. I don't really have much on the Narrows and Bath County game, but I do know that's going to be a huge game. Narrows, they're a heck of a team. I can't remember that guy they got, but he's a huge, huge star player. Anybody would love to have him. But Bath County is undefeated. So I think that's a very interesting game. I think that's a good measuring stick for Bath County for us out here that haven't watched them. Galax at Grayson County. Grayson County is coming off their first loss last week against George Wythe. And, Galax, I think, are having a little bit of a down year. But I think even their down years, they can still be dangerous. So you never know. Auburn would be playing at George Wythe. George Wythe is kind of just, I don't want to say come out of nowhere, but everybody's sitting here talking about Grayson County, Narrows, Honaker, and nobody's really talking about George Wythe, and they just quietly, ended up beating Grayson County last week, which was the number 1 seed in that region. So, and they won 23-0. So it was a shutout. They've been pretty impressive this year. Their senior quarterback, Tandem Smith, he's one of the best players probably in this area. Braden Rainey is also another good player they got. So they're a team to watch out for. It's going to get interesting when we get in these single A playoffs. So I do want to kind of run down a little bit on the double A games. So I do want to start off with talking about Lebanon at Tazewell. This game, I think Tazewell. I don't want to talk about their defense, but the defense has not played quite like their offense has. I think they do have some star guys on defense. Talking about Brock Alley and Ziegler as well. I believe he's been putting up numbers on defense, but it's definitely been outshined by their offense. Carter Creasy is one of the best quarterbacks in this area, and you got guys that he's thrown to like Logan McDonald, who we had as a player of the week last week, I believe, or it might have been the week before, but nevertheless, they've been putting up crazy numbers. But this week, Carter is questionable whether or not he's going to play. He had to leave the game last week against Graham, and then you also have Brody Patterson, who's also out potentially. So a lot of question marks, as far as health goes for some of these guys, some of the star players for Tazewell. And I know that Lebanon has had a down year, but they still got talent. Their quarterback, he is a heck of a quarterback. I still think he's one of the better quarterbacks in this area. I think his name's, I don't want to butcher this, but I think it's Mike Reese. I'd have to double check on that because we've talked about him several times, but for whatever reason, yeah, Michael Reese. He's there. You also got senior Carter Dillon, who scored over 50 points as a running back and kicker. And then you also have Toby Baker, who's a very talented sophomore. But I want to give a shout out to Andrew Calhoun, some of my family. He's in there with Hunter Cox and Max Boyd, which is a very strong defensive players. So regardless of how this game goes, I want to give him a shout out. But I think this is an interesting one. I think if you would have had those starters there for Tazewell, I would have said Tazewell probably easy. But you never know. You have a few injuries like that, and you have a team like Lebanon that they have some talent. We saw it against Virginia High. They kept it close. Virginia High pulled away, but it was still a close game. So another one bring up is Graham at Richlands. Graham, just that we just mentioned, is coming off that game against Tazewell last week. They won the Southwest District title. They beat Tazewell 49-6. And I did not think it was going to be that big of a game. Jamar, or big of a blowout. Jamar tried to tell me. But I don't know. I just thought that Tazewell's offense, and with the injury and stuff, I don't know. But I think Graham really showed us, like, hey, Union got us before. But I think they're itching to have that rematch with them. But you got Tydress Clements that's there, and I've not watched him play, but from everything that I've heard, he is the best player in this area, and it's not even close. And that's saying something considering how many stars we have in this area right now. Richlands has struggled this year. It's been a rough year for them. They only got past 6 games. Richlands only managed 141 total rushing yards. So first year quarterback Andrew Boyd, he's got 10 touchdowns on the year. He's been doing all right, but I think overall the team, I don't want to be down on them, but we grew up watching like Wicks and McCracken and all those classic teams, and even as we were playing, they still had good teams even then. But right now they're hoping to avoid their first 0-10 start, and I think they're going to be 0-10. I hate to say it like that, but they're playing against Graham, who's very good. I don't want to talk on it a whole lot because I don't know the coaching situation over there, and I don't know what's going on over there. But I can tell you this, and I'm sure you might agree with me. When I was growing up, that's one of the best atmospheres in this area, as over there at Richlands at that field. Was it Ernie Hicks Stadium?
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Now, I can tell you that me and you went to a few games when they were, consistently playoff bound, and that's a heck of an environment. You went to more games than I did, so what do you remember from as far as just the environment goes? I want to give them some positives here. I mean, I know that at the moment there's not a lot, unfortunately, but that environment still to me is one of the best.
Yeah. Which I remember a little about the year they went to state and won in 06. But from then on, like when they had Austin Fuller and they had Bradley Fuller, I think that was his name. I think it was his brother. He played quarterback. Um, all the way up to the Johnson boys from Big Creek. Every week that place, I mean, home games for sure. I mean, it was. I mean, it was like a sold out concert, to like the biggest band in the world for a high school team.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous. Like even when you would come through the gate, go like you would have. I mean, you were pushing through people just to get try to find a seat, and which my brother was the one that would always want to go, and I would go with him, and we'd have to be there. The game wouldn't start till I think that was back when kickoff was at 7:30. We would get there 5:30, 6 o'clock just to get a seat, and by the time kickoff was by the time 7:30 rolled around, I mean, it was packed.
Yeah.
And that's for a high school game around here. That's crazy. And that's what I remember is just how excited people were to come and watch high school football. Like that's a good memory. I mean, it really is. It's a good time.
Yeah. I think Shane talked about it a little bit too. Some of those years, they actually averaged more fans than opposing teams, or if when they went on the road, their fan base was so good that they averaged more fans than the home team of the other stadiums. And I remember taking I don't know if he remembers this, but I took Tayton one time. I think this was maybe Tayton's freshman or sophomore year. Might have been before that. I can't remember. If he's listening to this, he could probably correct me. But we took him. I took him over there to watch. I think it was Bluefield in Richlands for the homecoming, and I remember him looking at me like, "Man, this is like a college game." And I was like, "Yeah, it's awesome." And even those years, I think that they were competitive. I'm not sure where they were at as far as a playoff picture or what they ended up doing. And I'm sure even now, I've not been over there, but even with them potentially going 0-10, I'm sure the support's still there. That's a great football town, football city, whatever you want to call it. It's one of those. Shane kind of mentioned it too in the podcast. It's kind of like one of those Friday Night Lights towns. You
Yeah.
walk through there, or you go through town, and you see all the stores closed down, and all the doors say at the game. So that's something pretty special. So just to finish out on this too, one of the better games I think in this area is you got Gate City at Ridgeview. Ryan O'Quinn for Ridgeview. He's had 1,180 yards passing. He's got 25 touchdowns. So he's been playing really good this year. But another quarterback as well, Gate City, they have Luke Bledsoe. He's passed for 835 yards and 8 touchdowns. And they also have Walker Hillman that has 750 yards rushing. So they got some talent too. And I think that Gate City, and you remember this from the Richlands games, I mean, for years, even when Richlands was as good as what they were, that Gate City game was hard because their defense was always solid. They were always fundamentally sound, always had a great game plan. And I think that not much has changed in that department. I think they still have that defensive mind as a program, even though they do have a heck of a quarterback with Bledsoe. I think a few weeks ago I would have said Ridgeview would have had this one. But I think that Abingdon game, and I'm not taking anything away from Abingdon because I think they got some star guys from their team, but the way they just put it on Ridgeview kind of gave me some concern for Ridgeview. So I think this game might be closer than what people think. We'll see as far as Ridgeview goes. We'll see where they're at defensively. And this might be one of those games, if you had a certain total, you might pick the under. So before we get off this high school segment, I did want to mention Abingdon because I know that we don't cover much AAA on this podcast, but they are local to us where me and you work. We work in that area. So I do want to, kind of highlight that game. They play at Lehigh. And they had Alex Hawkins that in their matchup last year with them had 153 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Lee had 185 yards passing and 3 scores, but ended up failing to convert on a 2-point conversion attempt with 1 minute left. So far, Abingdon last week ended up allowing 500 and some yards to Union. So, that's a game we thought it might be kind of close. Well, I did. Jamar was on the money again, as he is most time in this high school stuff. He knew that Union would probably pull away with that one. But the Falcons, they got a heck of a running back in Owen Barr. He's approaching 1,000 yards. He's got 14 touchdowns. They got a good quarterback, Luke Honaker, as well. So I think that this would be a game where you're going to see Owen Barr eclipse that 1,000-yard mark, and they're going to get a win. So that kind of concludes our high school segment. It seemed more like a Talking Cameron segment. I just want to kind of get some of that stuff out here. I kind of had some of the research done prior, and I do want to say a little disclaimer because I don't want to sit here and throw out a lot of this stuff without saying that a lot of my air sources, even J-Moore's as well, is the Bristol Herald Courier. Great paper. They got great writers over there that, as far as like local sports and stuff go, they put in the work. They go out there and do their research, and it makes it a little easier for guys like me that don't have the ability to go and do that, to be able to sit here and talk about it. So again, awesome paper, and that's where a lot of our stats come from. So we're gonna go into our college football segment of this podcast. This is one where we're gonna see Rusty, and you already see him warming up his hands there, snapping. We're going to really get down into it. So let's get this thing started. This is our Porch Talk college football segment. All right, so this is our college football segment. We're going to go here, and I didn't get a chance, and I hate that I didn't do this. I just now remembered it. I was going to try to get on here and I was going to try to send these games to Jamar, and if he got a chance at work to send me his picks. Unfortunately, I didn't do that because it just now hit me. But I will say that our record so far is I'm 45-22. Jamar is 43-24. So the 2-game lead still stands. We had a few swing both ways last week, but we still ended up where we were before. So our first game is going to be 23-ranked Kansas State at 7th-ranked Texas. It'll be Saturday, 12 o'clock on Fox. Texas, they are ranked the top 10 in the college football playoff ranking for the first time. And Kansas State, man, they're really coming on at the right time. Big Big 12 matchup. You still have Quinn Ewers out for Texas, and Malik Murphy's coming back. That's Rusty's favorite quarterback. If y'all missed the last episode, I'm just joking. But they still do have star running back Jonathan Brooks. If you haven't watched him play, I'm not saying he's a John Robinson or anything like that, but he's a stud. I mean, he's a heck of a running back. Kansas State got off to a slow 3-2 start, but after that, they've been playing great. They put a beating on TCU last week in a game that I thought was going to be a lot closer. This game has been really competitive since the Big 12 was formed back in '96, but the Longhorns hold a 13-10 advantage right now. So, as far as this game goes, a few things to watch for. The running game mainly. Well, I will say this first before I get into that. Right now, there are 5 Big 12 teams right now that are tied for first place with 4-1 conference records. Oklahoma State, and Iowa State, and then you have these two as well. And we're going to get into the Oklahoma State thing here in a second. But I think the rushing attack is going to be a huge factor in this game. Jonathan Brooks up against that Kansas State defense. And I think Kansas State's defense is probably one of the better rushing defenses that you're going to have in the Big 12. So, and this is probably the biggest rushing defense or best rushing defense they've faced since they played against Alabama. But something they don't have now that they did have them then is Ewers. So we'll see how Murphy does. I'm really tempted to go Kansas State. The only reason why I'm not is I'm going to roll with Texas's defense. I think that Jonathan Brooks, I think the running back is going to end up making enough plays, enough to where Brooks, I mean, he can keep it in there to where I think they can score around 20 points. I think their defense can hold Kansas State under 20. So I'm going to pick Texas as my pick. Rusty, what do you think about this one?
I'm right with you. I think Texas will probably win this one. I think it's going to be a lot. I think it's going to be really close. I don't see either one of them pulling away. You had mentioned Malik, me being a fan of Malik Murphy. I had watched him in a spring game earlier this year, and I mean, he can sling that ball, man. And
A big guy.
Yeah, he's really big. He's very athletic. I think last week when he came out and he threw the interception, I think that I think when you're coming off the bench like that, the speed is it's something to get used to. Not everybody can just come in and just take over, but he got his footing. He got back out there and he helped win the game last week, and they won I think 35-6 against BYU. It's BYU, but at the same time, coming in, being, everyone's uncertain about you. You're not 100%, people are not 100% sure you're going to be able to come in and fill the shoes Quinn has, set for Texas. That's a statement for him, to be able to come in and almost shut out BYU. Now, Kansas State did shut out Houston last week, but I think, whoever, I mean, it's a statement win for either team. I mean, it's a must win, for either team. But I think Texas pulls it out really close.
I think it'll be a good game. Kansas State reminds me a lot of like Oklahoma State and TCU. Those are teams that can win any week. You don't know the way they play.
Right.
So our next game will be 15th ranked Notre Dame at Clemson. It'll be at Saturday at 12 o'clock on ABC. This is I guess you call it a revenge game. I mean, last year, Clemson had hopes of kind of sneaking in there, maybe to get in the playoffs. Didn't happen. They ended up getting upset by Notre Dame, so they played playoff spoiler in that game. This year, a completely different situation. Clemson is not in a playoff picture at all. They've had probably the worst stretch of games they've had. I mean, heck, over 10, 15 years, if not more than that. I mean, this is unheard of for them. And if y'all haven't heard of Dabo and the fan going at it on that radio show, it kind of shows you where the tensions are right now with him and that program. But I mean, to his credit, I agree with what he said. With that being said, though, I mean, Clemson is two of only 7 programs that have had multiple college football appearances. So, like, Clemson, people would underestimate just how good they have been. They have had a 10-year season or 10-win season for 12 straight years. They have won the national championship twice, or in 2016 and 2018. They've reached the college football playoff 6 straight times, and that was in 2015 through 2020. And they twice finished the runner-up as far as the national championship and all that. And they won 8 ACC championships in this time. So people are against Clemson and Dabo, But I can go ahead and tell you right now, I love Dabo as a coach. He's one of my favorite coaches in the whole country. I would take him in a heartbeat at UVA. I mean, nothing against Tony Elliott. I mean, he came from that program. But I love Dabo. I think this game is going to be a strong defensive game. Clemson right now is as far as yards per play allowed, they're ranked 8th, and you also have Notre Dame up there at 10th. I think that Clemson's going to have to try to get Cade to not make mistakes. I think here a few weeks ago, can't remember what game that was they lost, where he actually changed the play at the end, and he's supposed to hand it off. And I'm not sure that they would have scored even on the handoff. But with that being said, you got to run the play that's being called. It's kind of just a bonehead play on his part. He's a talented quarterback. But Notre Dame's starting to come, I don't want to say come around because they were playing really good, but that loss, I think, to Ohio State kind of downed them a little bit. They're starting to find their groove a little more. Sam Hartman, he's played great. He is right now the 6th FBS player to throw for more than 15,000 yards in his career. He passed Ty Detmer on the all-time passing yardage list with 15,093 total yards. He has 128 career touchdown passes, and that leads all quarterbacks in the country right now as far as career rankings. But he also ranks 7th on that list. So I think you're going to see Hartman play a good game. I want to pull for Clemson. I want to see them pull that out and bounce back. I hate to see them go on a losing record. Not a Clemson fan. I mean, they're actually an enemy, I guess, if you want to say an ACC foe, but I love Dabo. I hate that people are downing him like they are, but I'm still going to go with Notre Dame on this one.
I'm torn. I really am. I mean, I shouldn't be torn. I mean, honestly. But the thing with Clemson is they've been in every single game they've played this year, other than the first game against Duke. That game, I mean, that game was there was not a ball game. But Florida to me is one of the best teams in college football right now. I mean, Jordan Travis is playing great, and they were right there, and they could have beaten Florida State. They could have beaten a couple of the teams that they lost to this year. So I mean, they're aside from a few mistakes or a few decisions, like you were talking about the Cade Klubnik, him handing the ball off, or him changing the play. I mean, take a couple of things away, and we might not even be talking about Clemson in the way we are. Dabo Swinney, one of the best coaches in college football. I mean, I mean, unless Kirby decided to leave Georgia, I mean, I would take
dark
Dabo,
day for you.
I mean, I don't know if there's anybody that could fill those shoes, but if I was, if we were coachless, Dabo Swinney would be definitely on my list. I think that there has been some personnel changes, and you're gonna have years like this. Like you're not gonna have, like, it's not gonna be like Nick Saban, Alabama. You're in the college football playoff, or you're right in the mix every single year. But I think what Dabo's done for that program has been excellent, and I think that this is just one of those years. It's not all went their way, and I think they'll get back there. I mean, it will take some time.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm gonna go with Notre Dame on this one, though. I really am.
Yeah, I agree. I still think they're getting the recruits in. I think they're probably going to change their focus a little bit. I think Cade's a good quarterback, but I think they're going to try to snatch him one that's a little better, and then that might come through the transfer portal. Y'all have a pretty good one of your 4 or 5 5-star quarterbacks that you have in the locker room. So who knows?
We have 3 5-star
Three.
quarterbacks.
Oh, my
Well,
bad.
actually, let
My
me
bad.
think here. Carson
Yeah.
Beck, I
Yeah.
think he was a 5-star quarterback.
Hmm.
He wasn't the number 1 quarterback coming in out of
Hmm.
high school. We have, of course, Dylan Raiola, who's just signed this year. Brock Vandegrift,
Yeah.
Gunnar Stockton. All those guys were 5-star quarterbacks, so I'm okay with that. But quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence don't come around every single day. You
No.
know, I mean, Clemson had Trevor Lawrence, they had Deshaun Watson. I mean, those were some, peak years for, that program. And those quarterbacks don't come around that often.
No. No. And Lawrence especially. I mean, he came right after Deshaun Watson, and have
Yeah.
that transition like that. That's just I don't want to say lucky, but I'm sure they are very thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our next game we want to talk about will be Texas A&M at 10th ranked Ole Miss. Be Saturday at 12 o'clock on ESPN. Ole Miss right now, they've been playing pretty good. I mean, they're 7-1. They lost that game to Alabama that I think they should have won. They let that one get away from them, but they bounced back good. They're right there in the race for the SEC West. Pretty big game next week for them against a Georgia Bulldog team. So they definitely don't want to overlook Texas A&M though. Ole Miss does have a heck of an offense. They've been scoring like crazy. That LSU game, if y'all haven't watched that, I know that we missed it. Logan, if he was here, he could tell you about it because he was the only one of our group that was sweating that game. But with that being said, they're third in the SEC in total offense. They're averaging 474 yards per game. So that offense is going to be going against a heck of a defense in Texas A&M. They lead the SEC in total defense, only allowing 269 yards per game, and they rank third in scoring defense at 19 points per game. So kind of two strengths going at each other in this one. Texas A&M defensive coach Bobby Paterno. I don't know if you remember him, but he was a former Louisville head coach, former Arkansas head coach. He's the offensive coordinator. I'm sorry. But he's had that offense playing well, just to complement the great defense they have. So I think this is going to be two strengths matching up, offense versus defense. I'm still going to give it to Lane and Ole Miss. I think that game next week against you guys, I think that's going to be a fun one. I think we'll get to the Missouri game here in a minute, but I think Missouri might be more dangerous to you all than the Ole Miss game. We'll see, but I'm going with Ole Miss to win this one, but I think it'll be a close one. It's going to be a little bit more low scoring than what they would like.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Ole Miss. Texas A&M really hasn't found any footing this year. They come off. They finally won. They were coming off a 2-game losing streak, and they finally won. But Ole Miss hasn't lost since Alabama, and they're kind of on a roll. So I just think that that's an advantage for them. And I don't see I see it being semi close. I don't see Ole Miss blowing them out. They may very well blow them out, but I don't see it. I'm thinking more like 31-17, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad score. So it's a big one for you. Now, this is the
Yeah.
one that I think you're probably looking forward to coming on here and talking about. So we got 12th ranked Missouri. They going to second ranked Georgia. Now second ranked, was first ranked. But college football playoff rankings came out. They are now 2 behind Ohio State. That game will be Saturday at 3:30 on CBS. This game, I think, is going to be very interesting when you have, right now, two like high scoring offenses. I think both of them are playing great on that end. Carson Beck has really came into his own. I know that when the season started, you was talking to me about Bobo and how conservative they were being and stuff like that. And I think you really saw his play calling change. And this is just from an outsider looking in, so you can tell me different. But I think you saw that kind of change a little bit the second half of the Auburn game. And the ensuing weeks, he kind of let Carson Beck go. And he's playing great, man. Even without Brock Purdy, he is, I think he's had, 5 games, or last 4 or 5, he's had 300 yards passing. So that's very impressive. I think now without Brock in a way, they're almost more dangerous in some aspects because you don't know where they're going to go to. But on the flip side, as far as offense goes, we can't sit here and not talk about Missouri's offense. Brady Cook's a heck of a quarterback, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and he's got one of the best receivers in the country, Luther Burden III. And not to be forgotten, you got Cody Schrader, who is one of the better running backs in the SEC. He's averaging 100 yards per game, and he had a career game against South Carolina last week, or not last week, but the week before that, 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they got stars on that side of the field. And one weakness that you all do have is that you all are one of the worst teams in the SEC when it comes to sacks. With that being said, y'all still do have a good secondary. So I mean, you all got talent. It's not anything like that. And as of late, you have really been putting a hurting on people. Winning the game last week against Florida, and a game that I think me and Jamar both thought might be a little closer. I would have loved to go Missouri. I know you wouldn't, but I would love to go Missouri. But I just can't do it. Not with if you would have asked me who's going to win this game like week 3 or 4 when y'all were kind of struggling, I would have said Missouri, but I can't do it. I'm going Georgia.
Good pick. It's a very good pick. Well, I mean, I could sit and talk about Georgia all day long. But I think the bye week last week, or not last week, the week before, was a very good thing for everyone to readjust. We had, like, early in the season, we were throwing a lot of screens, we were throwing a lot of, short slants. There was not a whole lot going on. We could get the running game going a little, but not enough to make a huge difference. Dejon Edwards has really taken the running game and kind of ran with it. We lost Branson Robinson before the season started, and he was looked at as possibly the number 1 guy over Dejon Edwards. Him and Dejon were both, 1 and 2. It just depended on, who was, it's usually our forte. But the bye week is what really, I feel like, shifted us to play the way we played against Florida, because I didn't expect that either. It kind of reminded me of the Kentucky game a couple weeks ago. Going into that game, I was really worried. I didn't think that our offense was going to, be clicking. I thought their running back, I think it's Price. Is it his last name?
The
Kentucky's
Ray Davis, I think.
Ray Davis.
Yeah.
I don't know where Price came from. But I was really worried about him, and I was worried about, okay, if he runs really well and he gets the running game going, that's going to open up the passing game. And we had struggled, we shouldn't have struggled. Our defense has struggled a little all year. Of course, getting sacks, getting, letting people downfield is what we have let happen all year. And a lot of it's, thankfully, the quarterbacks have overthrown them, or, it just didn't work, or we finally transitioned and gotten back where we needed to be. But I think the bye week, again, like I said, really helped us play the way we played against Florida. I'm curious to see how we're going to deal with the quarterback from Missouri. And I mean, I'm not sure if Luther Burden, if that's the only receiver that they have. But I mean,
Sure,
he
it's
is.
not. Yeah,
Well, I'm not sure. I've not watched
you know,
Missouri all year, but I know that he has the leading. He's leading the SEC in receiving yards. So I mean, what they've got going on in Missouri is really, seems like it's cooking really well. We barely beat them last year. We were actually losing the game up until the fourth quarter. So I'm hoping that's not the case this year. I'm hoping that we come in and we handle business really quick. Brock Bowers is still out this week. He had ankle surgery. He's got a couple weeks left, I think. Oscar Delp was still gonna take the reps at tight end. We'll see. I mean, it's at home, and that's an advantage. Hopefully we can keep the ball rolling.
yeah. No, I mean, I think, like we said before, I mean, it's gonna be a fun game to watch. I think that you're starting to get into the toughest part of your schedule. I know that we talked about the other day. Up to this point, y'all are 100th ranked on the strength of schedule, but I think you're starting to get in some tougher games. This is your toughest stretch. This game, you got Ole Miss, you got Tennessee coming up. So I think that's it, ain't it? As far as
No, well, yeah, we play Georgia Tech at the end of the year.
okay,
But
well, and Georgia Tech
that's
ain't terrible team. I mean they beat UNC last week, so you never know with them on any given Saturday, I guess you could say. But you also have man that SEC championship game, so you also have that coming up. So
yeah.
which y'all would probably make it to. So we both got Georgia on that one. So our next game we have is Oklahoma, 9th ranked Oklahoma at 22nd ranked Oklahoma State. Battle of Bedlam, Saturday 3:30 on ABC. So this game, I think this is a scary game for Oklahoma. You just come off that devastating loss to Kansas, one that I don't think they expected to lose. Now you're going to have to fight to get into the Big 12 championship. You're going to fight to have a chance at the college football playoff. They're not out of it, but I do think they need to run the table and win that Big 12 championship game to have a chance. And who knows, it could be them in Texas at the end. And I don't know what Texas quarterback situation might be at that time, but they're going to need to win that. So, with that being said, what Coach Gundy's done this year with Oklahoma State is nothing short of remarkable, I think, because everybody was kind of writing them off, and they were like, "What's going on with Oklahoma State?" They started off kind of struggling, but they ended up finding their way, started winning some games. I think a name that not many people talk about is running back for Oklahoma State. So far this year, I mean, he's one of the better running backs. I mean, a lot of people think he's a dark horse Heisman contender. It's Ollie Gordon. So he is the leader in the country, if I'm not mistaken, with 1,087 rushing yards at this moment. So usually it's that offensive air game. I mean, I remember back in the day, what's his name, redheaded guy that was like 26, 27 playing college, Brandon Whedon or Brandon something
Oh
like that.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah.
Oklahoma State.
Wait to the Cowboys.
Some of those teams, and even the one Blackman, the receiver, who's one of the better college receivers ever. High powered offensive scoring, throwing the ball. And I think this is a little bit of a change up for them with Gordon coming in here, and it's starting to be a little bit more rushing attack. And being that, I think that concerns me playing against Oklahoma, because last week I don't think Oklahoma did as good of a job as what I think they should have against Kansas in their rushing attack, and that's without Jalen Daniels playing for Kansas. They had their backup quarterback in, which Bean is a good backup quarterback, but I don't think you can't lose that game and it just be overlooked. Man, I have a hard time with this one. My heart says Oklahoma State because I love Coach Gundy, but my brain says Oklahoma, and they need it. They really need it. I'm going to go with Oklahoma, but I do think it's going to be a very close game. Dylan Gabriel is going to have to try to pull one out, just like he did against Texas. Something to keep or to mention. This game, this Battle of Bedlam, it's been going on since 1904. So it's something that we, with Oklahoma now leaving, going to the SEC, I hope they find a way to have this game going forward. But this could be the last one that we see. Well, you might see them playing the Big 12 championship. Depends on how things play out. But it could be the last game we've seen. And again, a series or a rival game that has played 118 times. That's pretty big, and it's kind of sad in a way to see that go. But give me Oklahoma in a close one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick Oklahoma too. I think Dylan Gabriel comes back and they bounce back after that loss last week, and they get back on the wagon.
Yeah. So just to kind of change it up a little bit, we went from, I think, with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, at least Oklahoma State side, you got a heck of a rushing attack, and I think that Oklahoma, even with the Gabriels, that's one of their strengths as well. And we're going to go to something a little bit different now. We'll go over to the Pac-12, and you got 5th-ranked Washington at 20th-ranked USC. They play Saturday at 7:30 on ABC. So you got two huge passing attacks now, and two guys that one guy in Caleb Williams has won the Heisman, and you got one that's looking to win one. Probably more concerned with trying to win the national championship, and you got Penix Jr. So two great quarterbacks going to be on display. I think that USC right now is kind of in a tough spot. They, even though they beat Cal last week, that was a close one. They, had those few losses. There's whispers right now about Caleb Williams even just sitting out for the rest of the season, which kind of is on par with what I think his attitude is. I don't know. I've kind of, I don't want to say lost respect. I ain't going to say lost respect because, that's kind of a hard thing to say, but I'm not as big of a fan of him as far as if I was drafting him one. I just think that there's certain things things that he's doing that are not, I'd say they're kind of smart things, but it's just not what you want to see in a leader or a football guy. And that's conversation for another time, but I think he is going to be playing this week. Now, if they lose this week, maybe that might be a conversation to be had. He might sit out. But Washington has won 15 straight games, and that is second behind Georgia's 25 straight games that they've won. So those are the current leaders right now in the country. This is the first time these two teams have met since 2019. So it's been a minute. Chris Peterson was the coach for Washington at that time, and Clay Helton was the coach for USC, if that tells you anything. So programs have changed since then. So far, Caleb Williams has struggled against ranked teams. He has not done quite as well as what I'm sure a lot of people would hope. He's 3-7 as a starter in 10 games against ranked opponents, with 29 touchdown, 10 interception ratio. So, the final 3 games of the season, you got Washington, Oregon, and UCLA. So they're not going to get any easier for him. With that being said, I think this game might be one of those games where it's a little bit worse on Caleb and worse on this USC team. I have no faith whatsoever in USC's defense. I think Penix is just going to tear it up all game. Rome Odunze, the receiver for Washington, I mentioned him a few times, one of the better receivers in the country. I think he's going to have another huge game in a big moment. They have struggled a little bit. Washington has the last few weeks to their standard, but I think they're going to get up for this game, especially with it being Caleb versus Penix. And I think Washington's defense is kind of sneaky. I've said it all year. I think they've got some talent, especially on that front seven. So give me Washington. Give me Washington. I'd say by 14 points at least.
I'm going to go Washington, and I'm a little bit more harsher on Caleb Williams. I wasn't a big fan last year when he come out and he had not going to say the word, but a derogatory word that started with the letter F, and then on his fingernails, and then Utah on the other, and I wasn't a big fan of that. I mean, some people might like it, some people don't. I wasn't a big fan. And Utah has handed him, a whooping both times.
Yeah.
I think USC as a whole has been a little bit overrated. Their offense, of course, is really good. Their defense is terrible, and I think the games that they've lost, the Notre Dame game, Caleb Williams was absent completely. I don't think that he's played on par with, the way he feels he is. He feels like he should be the number one pick. He should get a little stake into, whatever team that drafts him. Yeah, I don't think that he is that caliber of a player, at least not shown it this year. And there's a very good possibility they might not win another game this year. I mean, UCLA would be the game that you would be like, well, they could probably beat UCLA. Well, I mean, UCLA isn't terrible. I mean, they're ranked.
A good defense too.
Yeah, good defense. So I mean, there's a good possibility if Caleb Williams plays, they're still going to lose. I don't see them beating Washington this week, and I think Washington beats them by, I could see 14 to 21 points. I could see it. However, I think Penix is going to go off, and then next week if they play Oregon next week, I don't see Bo Nix laying off, the gas. I say they eat them up, and then UCLA. Don't know if Caleb Williams is going to even play that game, but if he does, that defense I feel like has the potential to stop him. So, I mean, honestly, for his draft stock, it's probably good for him to sit out. But I'll get off that tangent.
Well, no, I agree with you. I think that I also saw another mock just came out this week that the Cardinals are number one. And I think Thomas shared it in our group. But, sorry. They had Marvin Harrison Jr. going 1 to the Cardinals. So he might not be the number 1 pick anyway. But, they had him going number 2 to the Bears. But I agree with you. I think that we very well could see him roll off here and lose the last 3. And that does not look good for his draft stock. And I'm curious to see if he bails. And he says, see you later. I got the NFL to look forward to. Y'all are kind of ruining my draft stock. Or if he stays, which in of itself would be, that would be respectable, but we'll see how he handles adversity like that and how he plays and how he acts. Maybe we're too harsh on him, but I just think that when you're getting labeled as generational talent, one of the best quarterback prospects ever, all this stuff, I just think that with those type of expectations and those type of labels, that you're criticized more, and so that's just part of it.
Yeah.
So our last game that we're going to go over on this college football segment is 14th ranked LSU. We're traveling to Tuscaloosa to play 8th ranked Alabama. That's Saturday at 7:45 on CBS. this game, to me, I think it's one of the more intriguing games of the weekend. Alabama right now, they've won 6 straight after that game against Texas. They're starting to kind of come into their own. Defense is playing good. Milroe is playing better. He's still a weapon, I think, on his feet. He can hit the deep shot here and there. I think that intermediate range is still kind of an issue for him, but I don't think he's going to have any issue this week because LSU's defense is one of the worst passing defenses in college football. And we mentioned earlier that game between them and Ole Miss, and it was no defense playing that game. So I think that him against that secondary, it's going to be interesting to watch. He has a heck of a receiver in Jermaine Burton. I think he's going to have a big game. But on the same hand, I think this is going to be a huge game for Jalen Daniels. He is right now, I think, maybe the front runner for the Heisman. Him and Neighbors have been maybe the best 1-2 combo in football, probably right up there with Brady Cook and Luther Burden. So I think that him against this Alabama defense is going to be something to watch. And if he can pull it off, I think he's the only quarterback to beat Nick Saban back-to-back years. That's an incredible feat given how Nick Saban is as a coach and the teams he's had. To beat him, though, on a national stage like this with Alabama coming in hot would be huge for him, and it'd be a good Heisman moment, especially if they can win this game and keep it rolling. Given all that, though, I said on Facebook not long ago, I mentioned Tyler Hess's podcast on here, Tyler's Talking Sports. He put up there something about a poll. Can't remember. It had something to do with the SEC, and I said hot take. Alabama wins the SEC, and this is weeks ago. So I'm still going to stand by that. I think they make it to the SEC championship game, and I think it's a closer game than what people might think between you all and Alabama, and I think Alabama might squeak that one out. No, that is, of course, they go as Milroe goes. I think that is unfortunately their biggest weakness. He's an extremely talented guy, and I think he wins them some ball games. But I think that he's also the reason why they lose some ball games. So, but I, as far as this week goes, I'm going with Alabama, and I think Alabama might win this one. Probably around like 30 to like 20, maybe a 10-point ball game.
Yeah, I'm thinking around the same thing. I was thinking honestly like 34-24. So within that 10-point range, I think Alabama has bounced back this year, and of course I hate Alabama, and I'm not a huge. I mean, I respect Saban. It's kind of like the Tom Brady effect. I respect Tom Brady, but I'm not a huge fan because I'm a Georgia fan. So, but yeah, I think they bounced back really good from the beginning of the year. And if you would have asked me, week 1, week 2, or week 2, week 3, if they would be even in the conversation for the SEC championship, I'd have been like, nah, I don't think so. But here we are, almost at the end of the year, and we're talking about Alabama, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So that concludes our college football segment and college football pick'em. I do want to, before we get off here, I want to touch on the UFC fight night that we got this week. So this will go into our UFC segment of our podcast. So, UFC section here of their podcast that we're going to talk about the UFC Fight Night. They are in Brazil this weekend. We have now this is, of course, shout out to Logan. This is his favorite part of the podcast. Me trying to say some of these names, but Gelton, I guess say his name, Gelton Almeida, will be fighting against Derek Lewis, one of our favorites. Derek Lewis is coming in. That last fight he had was very impressive. That fight was the one where he lost all that weight. He came in with, I think, like a flying knee in the first round, which was crazy to see. And can't remember who he was in fighting that fight, but he ended up winning pretty quick. With that being said, Almeida's a completely different animal. Almeida has world class grappling, and unfortunately, Derek Lewis is not much on the grappling department. So, now, granted, we've not seen him in his new physical form try to grapple. But as far as technique and stuff goes, we've seen him struggle a lot in that area before. Um, I wanna go with Lewis because we all love him, and if he he kind of defied some odds by losing the way he did last time and had a 6-pack. Um, I would love to see him come out here and surprise everybody. I think he's I think plus like 375 underdog right now. A lot of people don't think he stands much of a chance in this fight against Almeida. Almeida, if you look at him, he's a very big guy, but he's a very lean guy for heavyweight. Does not look like your typical heavyweight. So I think that he is a good shot of winning. I'd like to see Lewis win, but the fact of the matter is Lewis just got arrested last week for driving like 150 in a 60 speed zone or something like that, even though he's still to this, as far as this week says that wasn't him. That guy had hair. That wasn't me. So, but I mean, that's just Derek Lewis. You know how he is. But I think Almeida's, if he gets it down to the ground, makes it a grappling fight, makes it a ground fight, I think Almeida's going to win.
Yeah. Kind of like earlier, you spoke about your heart and your mind. In my heart, I want Derek Lewis to win. I think he's a fan favorite. I've enjoyed watching him fight over the last so many years that he's been in the UFC. But Almeida is dangerous on the ground. He's got a really solid rear naked choke. He's dangerous on the ground, and that's not really Derek Lewis' specialty. So, I think if it lasts longer than 2 minutes, then I'd say I'm gonna probably go with Almeida. But I think that 2 minute window between the start of the fight, and that 2 minutes, I think that's Derek Lewis's best chance to win. But I'm probably gonna go with Almeida on this one. I think that he gets it to the ground.
Yeah. I think it'll be a fun fight to watch. I mean, it's something that we'll have before the big UFC card with Jerry and Jerry Prochazka, and you have Alex Pieta and that big fight, and you also have Tom Aspinall and Sergei, say his name. So huge fights coming up, but as far as a little teaser, if you want to say a teaser, I guess, before the big one, you'll have this one in Brazil. So, that kind of concludes our episode. I want to just again say thank you to Rusty for coming on because we work the same job, and so he's been up, I'm sure, since about 4:30 this morning, and it's about 12 o'clock. He's powered through, and I know I'm sure it was hard sitting here listening to me talk and trying to stay awake. So I'm very thankful for that. Again, we'll have Jamar back on probably next week. Things just didn't line up good as far as his work schedule goes, but that happens again with full-time job, and he works his butt off at doing what he does. So yeah, that's just where we are. But I'm very interested to hear his recap of the Scott County Super Bowl, Ryco and Twin Springs tomorrow night. He's already put it on the Facebook, but if you're listening to this before the game tomorrow night, maybe holler at him and save him a seat because I'm sure that place is going to be packed out. Give a little bit of a heads up going forward. We have some guests lined up. We got one next week that is a current player. If all things kind of work out there, hopefully scheduling and stuff goes, we don't want to hinder him from missing any preparation stuff before the playoffs. But we might have a current player next week, and then past that, maybe the week after that, we have a guy coming on that I'm very excited about. He is one of the I don't want to spoil it and tell you who he is yet, but he's a big figure, I think, in this area. He's done a lot of work in this area with sports. He's commentated. He's wrote articles. He's had tons of great life experiences that I'm very excited to listen to and excited for everybody else to hear about. He's met a lot of great people. So that's just a little teaser of things to come. Again, I want to say I'm very thankful for everybody's support. Um, we have had overwhelming support and stuff. I'm not saying that when we started this that I thought we wouldn't have that support from maybe like our family and stuff. I knew we'd probably have it from our closest ones, but then I thought, well, they'll listen to it and say that's cool, and then it would fade. I'm shocked and overwhelmed by the support we have from our friends, from the community, from Honeacre has been a huge supporter of us. We've had Coach Wicks on. Some of these coaches, to have them on, like Tester and Wicks and Krieger. If y'all haven't seen those episodes, please go watch them. Production wise, I'm hoping they'll keep getting better. I think that I didn't have a mic for the first two, and things. Well, I think maybe the first one, but regardless, we're getting better. We're getting used to this stuff a little more. We're going to continue to have guests on. Something I didn't mention during our country music segment, but we got Noah Spencer that's going to be playing at the Russell Theater this Sunday in Lebanon. He is currently on The Voice. That show is sold out. I was trying to get tickets to it, but it's sold out. So that's kind of cool for the community. I think he's on a talk show tonight in Richlands over at the Italian Village. So I'm hoping maybe they got some audio clips of that to put out. I'd like to hear some of his music as far as what he played tonight. If you haven't watched him on The Voice, check him out because he's going to be a star one day. So again, that's something else. We're going to try to have some musicians on as well going forward. We got a buddy, me and Rusty does that. He works every single day on his music and his craft. I'm excited about getting him on eventually. So a lot of things to be excited about going forward. But again, thank you all for the support. And we're going to try to keep doing this thing. I mean, we're not going to be done at the end of high school football. We're not going to be done at the end of college football. We're going to try to do basketball as well. I know that I'm not as knowledgeable as what Jay Moore is at that, given that he's brilliant in that area, and he's a heck of a ball player as well. So we're going to keep this thing rolling even through that, and try to get some recognition for these kids when it comes to on the hardwood. And that's really the main thing, is getting recognition for the kids and figures in this area that people may have flew under the radar or we knew of. Like, we knew of Coach Tess or we knew of Shane Wicks, but to get to hear them come on here and share their story, and you really get to see who they are and what made them who they are. And that's special. So, again, thank you for everybody for listening. Thank you for Rusty for coming on. Rusty, you want to say anything before we head out of here?
Appreciate you having me on, bud.
Okay. Well, until next time, guys, God bless.
God bless.